Hey everyone, Joe Waxman here. And in this video, I want to look at the chart of Karl Marx, author of the Communist Manifesto. Don't forget to hit the like button, guys. It's really important. And subscribe if you haven't already. And share it with anyone who you think might like this. Share the screen. All right. So, Karl Marx. All right, he's obviously got this heavy Taurus stellium, basically a new moon. Moon is conjunct Sun by 2 degrees. Venus is a little further out. Venus is in pretty good dignity here in Taurus. And North Node is also here. So, funny thing is, not much is known about his childhood. So, South Node in Scorpio. If you look at Wikipedia, anyway, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to look up, read biographies because I'm doing one of these a day. So, it's pretty superficial research. But, in the Wikipedia, there wasn't much mention about his childhood. I'd expect it to be in Scorpio that something, some bad stuff, negative stuff, difficulties, especially with Mars being debilitated in Cancer. Yeah. Conjunct his North Node is Moon, Sun, Moon and Sun, and then Venus is a little further out, but all in Taurus in fourth whole sign, but third quadrant. And he was a writer. He started studying, I think his father wanted him to go into law. I think he did study some law, but he also studied philosophy and literature. And basically he became a writer, a philosophical writer. He wrote a lot. And with the prominent Mercury and Gemini, that's very fitting. Now this would be more like fourth house, but still connected to the third house. I mean, when planets are, like in a chain formation like this, they relate and they pull it back to, it's either going to relate to, the front planet or the back planet or both, whatever house it's connecting to. So my point being, obviously, Mercury in Gemini, even though it's more in the fourth, it's actually the fifth whole sign house, but the IC is in Gemini, so it would be difficult to make third, you could say third quadrant because the quadrant, but so anyway, it's kind of difficult to pinpoint it one house in this chart with these planets, with the way it is. Third, fourth, fifth significations here. Let's call it third and fourth. But yeah, he was a writer. He wrote a lot and a philosopher and a good writer. And he's very intelligent. Like, I'm not at all a communist or socialist. In fact, I think it's one of the worst ideas of modern times and easily, provable in so many ways that not only through experience, just the general philosophy of it doesn't make sense. It's I don't want to be too critical, even though, my Virgo moon wants to be very critical. That's one of the things about Virgo. But I would just say it's stupid. It's a stupid idea. But that doesn't mean he wasn't very clever. It just means he, in the big picture things, even though he's philosophical, okay, so let's talk about that. MC and Sag, Uranus and Neptune, both retrograde in the 10th quadrant, 11th whole sign house. Yeah, disposited by Jupiter. Jupiter is debilitated here in Capricorn, retrograde. So, what kind of philosophy does he have? Obviously he's not religious. He was atheist, right? But it's not just Jupiter and Capricorn. It's Jupiter and Capricorn retrograde in the 12th whole sign house, 11th quadrant, right? So we're getting 11th house in both of these because 11th whole sign house, 11th quadrant, and that makes a difference. They're both being influenced. They're both influencing the 11th house, and we also have Aquarius. So we have this very strong triple Aquarian 11th house emphasis, and the point of that is that 11th house is dealing with society, right? You're not going to have a communist who's all like, first, second, third house, Aries, Taurus, Gemini. They're just not going to be thinking about that. You need that Aquarius 11th house influence, the Uranian influence as well. Those are all the significators of society, thinking about society for better or worse. And in this case, a lot of people would probably say worse, but I mean, he was just a philosopher. Can't really blame Karl Marx you can, but it's really the people enacting his philosophies that are to blame, and then they go and kill millions of people, and starve the rest and enslave the rest. But in any case, 11th house Aquarius Uranus is thinking very big about all of society. Its mind is going out to society, whether you're talking about socialism, communism, any other political ism, or an actual utopian society that really works. I mean, I'm sure Karl Marx had good intentions, but it just didn't. His philosophy, his big picture, was just not up to snuff. I mean, you can see Mercury is in Gemini, so he's very clever. He's a good writer, I'm sure. He made money writing, not a lot, but he did it, and he was printed for books and articles, but his philosophy was not up to snuff. I mean, this Jupiter is it's in detriment in Capricorn. It's very materialistic. So he doesn't understand anything spiritual. He was a total materialist, and he thought, life should be about materialism, not spirituality. Just forget anything religious or spiritual. We're just sticking to full-on materialism. Not only that, his Jupiter is retrograde, so his philosophy is going to be very contrary to the norm. It's going to go against the flow, as are his Uranus and Neptune. Uranus will be more rebellious when it's rebellious anyway. When it's retrograde, it's even more rebellious. I have Uranus retrograde on the ascendant. I know what that is. Neptune retrograde is definitely going to be the imagination is going to be new, different, and out of the box. He's gonna, his higher, his imagination, his ability to his subconscious, his dreams, like his vision, his idealism. Neptune and Uranus together are quite idealistic. So his ideals are going against the grain, as is his philosophy. And this heightened materialism, but very philosophical, materialistic philosophy. Now, his ascendant lord, his ascendant is in Aquarius, his ascendant lord is Saturn. You could say Uranus too, but I take Saturn to be the main one because it's physical. The outer planets are non-physical, meaning they have more of a energetic, intellectual, spiritual component rather than a physical, material component. Saturn and all the inner planets are physical, material. So Saturn being his main ascendant lord is, I mean, first house by quadrant, but moving into the second house, I feel like it's definitely has second house significations because of the way because of his concerns in life. Saturn is very much about the people, right? It's about the ordinary masses. And Pisces is that very, very all-embracing, accepting, compassionate sign. It's a sign of creativity and dreams and illusion, delusion, fantasy, but it's also about where we really can be all-embracing. And so you can see here, Saturn and Chiron. Chiron is the down and out, the wounded, the rejected, the lower class. Saturn and Chiron together say, you know, the real working class, the wounded, the rejects, the you know, the unfortunate of society. And together with Pluto, the power and control. He's lumping these together. He wants the masses of the underclass to have power and control. And that's where his compassions lie. That's where his values lie, because second house is what we value. It's our sense of value. It's our sense of worth, where we consider our resources. So his resources are with the people, the lower class, and he was against the bourgeoisie. He was for the proletariat. You know, his heart went to the proletariat, and he thought the proletariat should have all the power and control. And that was his idea of communism, of Marxism. We call it Marxism. He didn't call it Marxism. We call it Marxism. He was a socialist. Socialism was already a thing. It was already a concept. He got in with the socialist crowd and created communism, created the Communist Manifesto. I don't think he invented the word. I think there was a group that he became a part of. And forgive me, it's very complicated. His life was complicated. There was so much. And he had a partner, Engels. Engels. Now, I don't want to go into the Wikipedia page because it's just a mess. It's like huge, and I can't remember his first name, but I want to say like Friedrich Engels, something like that. Engels, anyway, last name Engels. And they wrote the Communist Manifesto together. So it wasn't just Karl Marx, it was him and Engels. But you can see here that he valued his values, and his compassions are with the people. And he himself, he's identifying with Saturn, that's his identity, is with the lower class, with the people. He's one of the working class, and he wants the power and control along with all the working class and people. And he's at square, there's this big square with this Neptune and Uranus in Sagittarius conjunct the MC. And you can tell that if he's down here and the square is up here with these planets up here very high in the sky, this is not the highest point in the sky, but it is where the sun would have made its at 12 p.m. noon, where it would have sat right here. So this is the point of intensity of the sun at its most intense point. 23 degrees Scorpio would be the exact height of the sky. But here we have you know, so this is very high, and then Sagittarius also is very high. So there's something that he's at odds with that is very, you know, Neptune also definitely has associations with sort of glamour and, you know, this kind of excessive, you know, like movie stars and glamour and fashion and like, you know, you get this feeling like it's something very high and very Neptune and Sagittarius. That's interesting because that's more of a recent transit, and this is going back to its previous cycle. So that's interesting. But Neptune in Sagittarius is very expansive, very dreamy, very big. And then with Uranus too, that's quite interesting. But you get the feeling like this is okay. So this really does explain his fight with the rich capitalists, which he called bourgeoisie. This, I mean, it's not one thing you can say is that because his ascendant is in Aquarius, and then Saturn is representing him, and that's squaring. So individually, that's squaring Uranus. So that's very rebellious. I have a Uranus Saturn square, and it's a very rebellious square. And it's actually a applying square, which means as he gets older, if you look at progressions, it's going to get more intense. And being that this is his ascendant lord, you could say that at some point he could have Uranian issues, which would be nervous issues. And he did. He developed, as he got older, he developed some nerve disease. And also that he's identifying here, and that he's at odds with this very high. Yeah, also Neptune and Uranus represent, again, these are not people, but this is a sort of bigger picture kind of thing. And it forms his ideology, this square of being with the people in the lower class against this higher class. I mean, this is just generally, I'm just trying to, if you look at these together, Neptune and Uranus in Sagittarius, conjunct the MC, that's very high. There's something very high that he's at odds with. So higher class, right? Sagittarius too, it's very high-minded. It's something that's very big and expansive and looking down upon everyone else. Now combine that with the Taurus influence in the third house, which he himself is also embracing. So there, I mean, it's like Taurus is very luxurious and very materialistic, practical, sensorial. He himself loved food, rich food, and drink and alcohol. He was an alcoholic. But it's almost like with all these planets in Taurus that it's okay for him to be very indulgent in all those materialistic things, including wealth and including an inheritance that he got from his father, which we can see if we look, I guess Venus would be the 8th house indicator. Technically, I mean, by this quadrant system, it's Mercury, but either way, it's I mean, I would say more Venus, to be honest, just because I don't take these cusps to I take the MC and the angles to the degree like that's very significant, but the rest of the cusp you have to be gray with them because it depends which house system you use. In some house systems this will probably be in Libra, in other ones it'll be more Virgo, so I just take it very loosely, suggestively. These are all suggestions, the succeeding Cadent house cusps, they're suggestive. So anyway, I would say more that Venus is representative of the 8th house. And so inheritance from the father, we could definitely, see that here. But North Node conjunct the moon, that's also that's difficult because it represents something so obsessive about the emotional nature of the person and their mind and what satisfies them. And so he's becoming obsessed with Taurian things, which is food and drink and indulgence and materialism, but also money, which is ironic, right? Because he had this inheritance from his father, and with it, he was living off of it. And he was also apparently funding communist like revolutionaries, to go and kill the rich bourgeoisie, right? Going back to this square, which is ironic, which kind of states that, like, in order for communism to thrive, you need the funds of capitalism, and it's self-defeating, right? Like, because it doesn't take that much to figure it out. Like, if you take away the workers are not the creative aspect of. It's so I feel like I don't need to explain why communism is a bad ideology, right? Because you have to have the creative class in order to come up with the idea that the workers then, go and build. The workers themselves are not creative enough to lead the way. And if they were, then they would be the leaders and they would get much more profit from that. It's self-defeating. And it's completely obvious how self-defeating it is. Right? You have the creative class, and they're the ones who are leading the way, starting the businesses, leading the businesses, taking all the risk, and they get the reward for leading the way. Then you have the workers, because I've been a worker, it's just obvious. Like, you just go to work and you're dumb, and you just do your hands and you, whatever it is, like digging ditches. I've done all of it, right? Landscaping. I've done welding. I've done cooking, and just being a laborer is stupid. Like, you don't have to think at all, and the person who's leading the way has to be the creative one. They have to be the inventive one. They are taking all the risk, and they're taking all the responsibility. They're leading the way. So yeah, they should get paid more. That's just basic. The rest is just petty jealousy. Communism is just a philosophy of petty jealousy. That's all it is. It's like, and he wasn't even a laborer. He was an intellectual, a philosopher writer, who was very indulgent, but he had good writing skills. Venus and Taurus, Mercury and Gemini, third house, North Node, Sun, Moon. He could write well, and he was clever enough to make it sound, plausible. He also had Mars in you could call it the fifth house, but it's also the sixth whole sign house. So it's going to have both those significations. Fifth house for creativity, for performance, for children. He had 7 children, only 3 of whom lived beyond childhood, I guess. Mars is debilitated. And Mars is ruling, well, it's the 10th whole sign house, but it's the 9th quadrant. And, well, I guess this would have second house. Second house. I'm not going to call it third house because of late degree ascendant. So his own wealth was not good. He was not rich, but I'm sure he would have loved to have been, considering how indulgent he was. He just loved, and he died young. He died at like 60 something with poor health from all the drinking, smoking, and fatty, rich, salty, fatty food that he ate. But he was very critical. He was very critical of a lot of things, and that's definitely 6th house Mars in debility, Mars in Cancer, because it's fueled by emotion, Now he's just going and criticizing everything. It's a very sixth house thing, competitive competition. Mars in the sixth house is a fighter. So he's really competing with all the philosophies of the day and saying how none of them are good enough. There was socialism, classical liberalism, and he basically criticized all of it, criticized all of society, and said, created the Communist Manifesto. And Das Kapital. I have no idea what's in Das Kapital. I have no idea really what's in the Communist Manifesto, except I know what communism is. It's it's giving the workers the power and overthrowing the bourgeoisie. And I'm not like in favor of crony capitalism, obviously, which is also what we have, and that's failed. And they use communism as part of a Hegelian dialectic to manipulate the people and say like, oh, the alternative is communism. So now we have to fight communism, with more capitalism, they're just playing, and the capitalism is just as bad, because it's like they usurp the power, they usurp the control. It's not true capitalism. It's not true fair trade. It's not libertarianism. It's not laissez-faire, where everyone gets a free chance. They control it. They manipulate it. Look at the lockdowns. They locked down all the small business owners, and the big business owners got to thrive. They became twice as wealthy as they were before, just in a very short amount of time. It's outrageous what they do. That's all cronyism. That's not capitalism. Capitalism is trading 2 cabbages for a nice loaf of bread. You have to be, really ideal, sort of in an ideal society, civilization, you would have a small government that supported small businesses, and small businesses would really be the one that was empowered, instead of these big conglomerates that just have way too much power and control. You'd have a lot of competition. You'd foster tons of competition, tons of make it really easy for businesses to start up, and therefore anyone who wanted to start a business, small business loans would be readily available. Red tape would be cut to a minimum. It would be, you'd have like a small business office where anyone could go and just, get help to start their business. And it would just be incredibly business friendly. And that's the way out of poverty. That's how you help people, because business means creation. You have to be creative. If I want to start a really small sourdough bread company, I should be able to do that. There should be help for me to do that. Education, systems in place, loans. That should be the government's, one of the purposes of government, instead of handing out freebies and like trying to control everyone and taxing the crap out of everyone. Like, tax way less and make it super business friendly, super small business friendly. I mean, that's really the ideal situation. And as far as, I can see, I've thought a lot about it. Anyway, Mars and Jupiter also have an energy trade, mutual reception by sign, not by degree so much, but they're in each other's sign of exaltation. So, and Jupiter also has one with mutual reception with Saturn. And this is closer by sextile, so this is a pretty strong one. So Jupiter's trading places with Saturn, and we can see that with the philosophy of the people, people's philosophy, materialistic people's philosophy, but also very critical, philosophically critical and competitive right here. Petty, even, you could say, I would say, because he was overly critical of everything, and it not really didn't really serve the good, but that's okay. That is what it is. Mars, or sorry, Moon and Jupiter have a nice trine, and his moon is in good dignity because it's exalted in Taurus, so he's well fed. He's getting happy off his good food and drink, and all his indulgences. That makes him happy to some extent. He can never be happy with North Node conjunct the moon, but it makes him just indulge more and more and more in those materialistic, the sensorial things, food and drink and smoke and whatever luxury he can afford. And apparently he was a good father, very loving, according to what it said in Wikipedia. So I don't doubt that. He doesn't seem like a nasty guy. It's just his philosophy is pretty off balance, I'd say. But Moon trine Jupiter is quite good, generally speaking. Now, neither of these are neither of these, Jupiter doesn't really benefit from Taurus, although Taurus is better than Capricorn for Jupiter. And Capricorn's not very good for Moon either. So, but it is a mitigating factor. He probably meant well. I don't think he was an evil person. Just kind of not all that correct. But Pluto is also semi-square the moon. I think it's more semi-square the node, but probably to some extent the moon. But that's not great for his mental health. And what else? Let's look at his draconic chart. Now here, Pluto is really close to the ascendant, Pluto and Chiron, so he definitely has power and control issues, the desire for power and control. In Aquarius, so Saturn also here is in pretty good dignity, Saturn in Aquarius. But there's that Aquarius influence again, thinking about society. The sun here in the second house. So again, sun in Taurus, sun in the second house, all these planets in the second house. So, but here it's in Aries, exalted sun. Venus obviously doesn't do good. It's in detriment in Aries. Shows that there's a lot of emphasis on materialism for him. Security, materialism. Aries, you can't help but say, is very self-motivated. So even though he was thinking a lot about society, he was also quite concerned with his own security, his own financial situation. Definitely he would want money and value security, value wealth, value resources. And I think that was also a part of it, this kind of jealousy, this petty jealousy between the haves and have-nots. It's almost kind of a theft, an ideology of theft. We didn't deserve it, but we're entitled to it. We didn't create it, but we're entitled to it. And again, I'm not for the modern version of what being called capitalism. I don't think it's capitalism. I think it's just another thievery from the people. Right. So don't mischaracterize what I'm getting at. They're both state control, whether you have communism or what we're calling capitalism or fascism. It's all top-heavy state control. The big guys take all the money from the little guys, but communism is exactly, they love communism because it's not a solution and it just creates an enemy. that is not really that, it's not a real enemy, it's just something to fight against, and so that they can usurp more power. It's a manipulation. It's Hegelian dialectic. These guys are now the MCs in Scorpio with Uranus and Neptune up here. That's interesting. Your Scorpio is other people's resources. I mean, that's it's definitely part of this Taurus polarity. Interesting, because out of all the signs, I definitely associate Scorpio with potential of theft, right? Jupiter is in Sagittarius, so definitely philosophical. Too bad he wasn't more accurately philosophical. And here, the ascendant is right above his Jupiter. So definitely Jupiterian, very prominent Jupiter. So very high in the sky. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Jupiter is ruling the second house, so it's definitely dealing with values. Second and 10th, career around philosophy of resources and the people. Anyway, that's Karl Marx. I think I got it all the relevant parts anyway. There was one more thing. Yeah, so Jupiter is, yeah, it's semi-sesqui square this Venus. So that's also not, so then this Venus is not making, it's not connecting with his Jupiter, with his philosophy. So his philosophy is not very beautiful, right? It's very materialistic. It has no beauty. It has no art. It has no femininity. It's a very scientific philosophy, and we can see that with being in Capricorn and trading places with Saturn, being the mutual reception with Saturn. We see this combination with scientific philosophers, right? With the psychologists, Jung and Freud, and then here with Marx, very materialistic scientific philosophy. That's not a criticism, it's just a fact. Jung was also spiritual, but he had the trine between Jupiter and Saturn. This is sextile, but because Jupiter is trading places, mutual reception, Jupiter's in Capricorn retrograde, so that's no good. And it has, obviously there's a disconnect between his philosophy and his own indulgence, right? It's okay for him to be all Venus and Taurus, eating all the, rich food and luxury. He's okay with that. But his philosophy is pretty impoverished in Capricorn and, mutual reception with Saturn. So rules for thee, but not for me, sort of thing. All right. I think that's it. Neptune, one more thing. Neptune also has this semi-square with the moon, or sorry, sesqui-square, a square and a half with the moon. So this sort of Neptunian, very high glamour, he's very against that sort of thing. With all the, there's only really two aspects, the square to Pluto and Chiron, and square to Moon. So he was very at odds with this very high kind of idea of Neptune, glamour, and the ideology around that. Anyway, all right, that's it for now, guys. Oops, wrong thing. It's the wrong button. Hope you enjoyed this. If you found it interesting, don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share it if you found it interesting, and book a reading with me. You can find me at my website, macroastrology.com, or email me directly at macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com. And you comment if you like, and I will see you next time. All right, thanks, bye.